Thanksgiving 2024. Picture this. Our family's $2.3 million colonial in Greenwich, Connecticut. Perfect autumn leaves scattered across the manicured lawn. The smell of Mom's famous herb-crusted turkey filling the dining room. Everything looked like a Norman Rockwell painting until my father slid a manila envelope across our mahogany table during dessert. "We've updated the succession plan for Patterson and Associates," Dad announced, cutting into his pumpkin pie like he was discussing the weather. "Sarah gets 40% controlling interest, Michael gets 35%, and the remaining 25% goes to the American Cancer Society." I sat there, fork halfway to my mouth, doing the math. 0%. Not even mentioned. 3 years of working as their unpaid consultant, fixing their accounting disasters, personally lending them $18,000 when they couldn't make payroll. And I didn't even rate a footnote in their legacy. Mom smiled that cold, practiced smile she reserved for disappointing waitstaff. "We decided leadership should go to family members who've actually contributed something meaningful to the business." As I stormed toward the door, I caught Dad on a panicked phone call in his study. "If we can't settle this by December 15th, we're looking at Chapter 11 bankruptcy." That's when I realized this wasn't just about cutting me out. They were drowning, and they'd just thrown away their only life preserver. The next morning, they called a family meeting in Dad's home office. All four of them lined up like a tribunal. Mom, Dad, Sarah, 32, MBA from Wharton, never worked a real job, and Michael, 30, failed at 2 startups, currently living in our guest house. "Before you say anything dramatic," Sarah began, using that condescending tone she'd perfected in business school, "let's be objective about contributions. I have the MBA, Michael has entrepreneurial experience. You've always been more of a background person." "Background?" I kept my voice level, pulling out my phone to record. "You mean like when I identified the Hendricks Group overbilling scheme that saved you $18,000 annually?" Dad waved dismissively. "That's exactly the problem. You make everything about money. Family business is about loyalty, vision, heart, not just spreadsheets and paranoia." Michael nodded eagerly. "Exactly. Like when I brought in the Morrison account through networking." "You mean when you played golf with their CEO and I did 3 months of proposal work for free?" I interrupted. Mom's voice turned icy. "This attitude is precisely why we made this decision. Sarah brings fresh strategic thinking. Michael understands relationship building. You just audit everything to death." I looked around the room at their united front. Sarah got praised for a $5,000 rebrand that changed their logo font. Michael got celebrated for networking, aka golfing on company time. My forensic accounting that uncovered major vendor fraud? Too aggressive and disruptive to team harmony. "Fine," I said, standing up. "But you might want to read those certified letters on your desk before you celebrate too much." Their faces went white. They'd forgotten I could see the return addresses. IRS Collections Division, Midwest Commercial Credit, and Harrison and Partners, bankruptcy specialists. They weren't just cutting me out of success. They were cutting me out of a disaster. You want to know what background person actually means? Let me give you the receipts. Literally. 2019. Dad's gambling crisis. I'll never forget that 2 a.m. phone call. Mom was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. Dad had gambled away the mortgage payment again, and the bank was threatening foreclosure. "Please," she begged, "you're the only one who can help us." So I did what any devoted daughter would do. I liquidated my entire 401k and drained my savings account, $47,000 gone in one wire transfer, along with my retirement security and emergency fund. I was 28 years old, watching my financial future evaporate to save theirs. Bank transfer receipt. Emergency family loan. Personal account to Patterson joint account. $47,000. Reference. Mortgage crisis relief. 2020, 2021. COVID financial bleeding. Their marketing agency lost 60% of its clients overnight. While Sarah and Michael quarantined in their comfortable apartments, rent paid by mom and dad, I was fielding panicked calls at all hours. We can't make payroll. The landlord is threatening eviction. Please, just this once more. Each time, I told myself it was temporary. Each time, I watched my bank balance shrink while my anxiety grew. March 2020, $35,000 from my emergency fund when they couldn't pay office rent. I remember staring at my account balance afterward, $3,200 left. July 2020, $28,000 when they lost the Hartley manufacturing account. I had to put groceries on my credit card that month. November 2020, $45,000 to prevent office lease default. This one required a personal loan that's still haunting my credit score. February 2021, $25,000 for employee payroll when their biggest client went 90 days overdue. I ate ramen for 3 months. Personal financial statement. Net worth dropped from $89,000 to $3,000 in 1 year, 2022. Sarah's wedding extravaganza. It's my special day, Sarah kept saying as the budget spiraled from $8,000 to $16,000. The venue needed upgrading. The flowers had to be imported. The dress required custom alterations that cost more than my car payment. When Dad pulled me aside with tears in his eyes, explaining about cash flow challenges and how this was investing in family happiness, I felt that familiar sick feeling in my stomach. But Sarah was my sister, and this was her once-in-a-lifetime moment, right? I took a loan against my Honda, $35,000 for orchids and champagne that would be forgotten in a week. Auto loan documentation, $35,000 secured loan against 2019 Honda Accord. Purpose, family wedding expenses. 2023, Michael's startup failure, number 2. When his revolutionary meal kit service collapsed, leaving $6,000 in unpaid supplier bills. Dad called it a reputation risk for the family business. The suppliers were threatening to sue and file liens. I paid every single bill to protect everyone. Various vendor payment receipts totaling $6,247. Final settlement payments for Freshen Up LLC obligations. Here's the kicker. Every single loan came with the same promises. We'll pay you back with interest. You're really saving the family. This is what family loyalty looks like. We'll make sure you're taken care of in the will. Meanwhile, at every family dinner, they'd criticize my lack of ambition and failure to take risks like successful entrepreneurs. I was bleeding money to keep them afloat while they lectured me about not being a team player. The irony? I'm a senior forensic accountant at McKinsey & Company, making $16,500 annually. I specialize in corporate restructuring and fraud detection. My background person expertise was exactly what their failing business desperately needed. But Sarah had an MBA, so clearly she was more qualified to run a marketing agency into the ground. Email from Mom, dated December 2023. Honey, we know you're busy with your own career, but Sarah is really learning the business. She'll be Chief Strategy Officer at $90K, and Michael will be Director of Business Development at $75K. We're so proud to have real entrepreneurs in the family. Total family loans outstanding, $34,700. Total acknowledgement or repayment, $0. The morning after the will reading, I drove past their office building. Posted on the front door was a notice of federal tax lien for $84,700 in unpaid payroll taxes spanning 3 years. Suddenly, their eagerness to hand leadership to Sarah and Michael made perfect sense. They needed scapegoats, not successors. Within 48 hours of the will reading, I received a certified letter. Patterson and Associates Board Resolution, immediate termination of all consulting agreements. Effective immediately. No severance. No explanation beyond strategic restructuring. Sarah celebrated on Facebook. Exciting news. Dad asked Michael and me to take over leadership at the company. Sometimes family businesses need fresh energy from people who really understand the mission. Entrepreneur, life, family first. The comments were brutal. Family friends who'd watched me work unpaid for 3 years, suddenly praising Sarah's natural leadership abilities and Michael's innovative vision. I became the unnamed family member who couldn't handle not being the favorite. Dad escalated things by calling my McKinsey supervisor, claiming I'd been moonlighting inappropriately and creating potential conflicts of interest. Nothing happened to my job. My boss knows better. But the humiliation stung. Then came the housing crisis. I'd been living in the converted garage apartment behind their house for 2 years, supposedly saving money while helping family. The day after they cut me out, Mom served me a formal 30-day notice to vacate. Reason listed: personal property needed for other family uses. Michael moved his gaming setup into my apartment before I'd even finished packing. My financial reality check was devastating. $37,000 in outstanding family loans, with signed promissory notes they were now ignoring. $2,100 month minimum for decent apartment rentals in the area. Credit score damaged from family-related debt I'd co-signed over the years. Checking account balance, $32,470. I ended up in a Motel 6 off Route 95, eating Dollar Tree ramen and calculating how long my remaining savings would last. 3 weeks. Maximum. The lowest point came when Michael posted an Instagram story from some upscale bar. When you realize some people just aren't built for family business, sometimes you gotta make tough choices for the good of everyone. Gosh, entrepreneur life, just family first. Sitting in that motel room, surrounded by boxes of my life, I felt like the biggest fool in Connecticut. I'd sacrificed everything for people who saw me as nothing more than a personal ATM. That's when I started really looking at those photos I'd taken of the certified letters on Dad's desk. And everything changed. At 3 a.m., hunched over the motel's ancient Wi-Fi connection, I stopped being their victim and started being their worst nightmare. See? While I was wallowing in self-pity, my forensic accountant brain was subconsciously processing those legal documents. The names, the amounts, the timelines. Something didn't add up. So I did what I do best. I started digging. Connecticut Secretary of State Business Database Search Results. Patterson and Associates LLC. Status: delinquent. Tax filings overdue since 2021. IRS Business Tax Return Search. No returns filed for Patterson and Associates LLC since 2020. PPP Loan Database Public Records. Patterson and Associates. $6,000 loan approved. April 2020. Employee count claimed. 23. That last one made me laugh out loud, probably scaring the guy in the next room. 23 employees? They've never had more than 8 people on payroll, even in their best years. This wasn't just mismanagement. This was systematic fraud. I pulled up my old email access, another thing they'd forgotten to revoke, and started downloading everything. My hands were shaking as I clicked through folder after folder. What I found made my stomach drop. They'd been stealing employee tax money for 3 years. COVID relief funds went straight to Dad's gambling debts and Sarah's shopping sprees. They were calling full-time employees contractors to dodge health insurance costs. I sat back in that crappy motel chair, staring at my laptop screen, and started laughing. Not happy laughter, the kind that comes when you realize you've been living in a complete lie. My obsessive record-keeping suddenly looked like divine intervention. Every receipt I'd saved, every email I'd kept, every conversation I'd documented, it was all evidence of their crimes. But here's what really shifted my perspective. I realized they weren't just bad family members. They were terrible business people who'd accidentally committed serious crimes. And I was the only person with both the expertise to understand the scope of their problems and the documentation to prove it. McKinsey pays me $65,000 a year because I'm exceptionally good at untangling corporate disasters and creating restructuring plans. This was just another Tuesday for me, except this time it was personal. They needed me more than I'd ever needed them. But this time, I wasn't going to beg to help. I was going to let them beg me. Text message to my McKinsey colleague James Richardson. Need to talk. Corporate crisis situation. Can you refer me to a white-collar criminal defense attorney? Asking for my family. The countdown clock had started, and they had no idea. I thought I had them figured out. I was wrong. 2 days into building my case, James Richardson called with devastating news. The attorney I referred you to, Elizabeth Chen, she can't take the case. Conflict of interest. Your family already retained her firm. They'd beaten me to the best lawyer in Connecticut. Then came the call that almost destroyed me completely. This is Detective Morrison, Connecticut State Police. We need to speak with you about allegations of embezzlement from Patterson and Associates. Sitting in that police station, watching the detective flip through bank records that made me look guilty, I realized how perfectly they'd framed me. Every loan I'd made could look like theft. Every transfer could seem like embezzlement. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated exactly how good I am at my job. The police interview was supposed to intimidate me. Instead, it clarified everything. They'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated exactly how good I am at my job. After 6 hours of questioning, with my hastily hired criminal defense attorney present, I walked out of that police station with something valuable: a complete understanding of their legal strategy and the names of every document they'd provided to law enforcement. Here's what they'd told police. I was a disgruntled family member who'd been embezzling money for years, using fake family loans to cover my tracks. When they discovered the theft and confronted me, I'd threatened to frame them for tax evasion. Here's what they didn't know. I had recorded our Thanksgiving confrontation. I had emails proving they'd begged me for money. I had bank records showing the money flow went from my accounts to theirs, not the reverse. And most importantly, I had evidence of their crimes that they didn't even know existed. Recording transcript. Thanksgiving 2024. Dad. Thank God you were able to help us with that payroll crisis last year. I don't know what we would have done without you. Me. Just remember that when you're updating the will, I spent the next week methodically building the most comprehensive corporate fraud case file of my career. Every email, every bank record, every text message, every recorded conversation. But this time, I wasn't doing it to help them. I was doing it to bury them. IRS Form 3949A, Information Referral. Detailed 47-page report documenting systematic tax evasion, fraudulent PPP loan applications, and misappropriation of federal funds by Patterson and Associates LLC Connecticut Department of Labor complaint. Systematic misclassification of employees as independent contractors to avoid paying workers' compensation and unemployment insurance. FBI IC3 Internet Crime Complaint. Fraudulent PPP loan application containing false employee count and payroll information. I filed everything simultaneously on a Thursday morning. By Thursday afternoon, Sarah was calling me, her voice shaking. What did you do? I told the truth. I said calmly. Something this family has forgotten how to do. You can't destroy us like this. We're your family. You tried to have me arrested for embezzlement. You stole my life savings and called it gift. You cut me out of the will while owing me $347,000. What exactly makes you think you're acting like family? The next call came from Dad. Please, we can work this out. We made mistakes, but we can fix this. You had 3 years to fix this. Instead, you doubled down on fraud and tried to frame me. Now federal agents will fix it for you. Email from Elizabeth Chen's office. Received, Friday. Our client wishes to terminate our representation effective immediately. We are returning all files and documentation to Patterson and Associates. Please consider this formal notice of withdrawal. Even their expensive lawyers were abandoning ship. But the call that gave me the most satisfaction came from Michael. You're going to destroy everything Dad built. No, I said. I'm going to save what can be saved. The question is whether you want to be part of the solution or part of the prosecution. The federal investigation clock was now ticking, and they finally understood who was really in control. The emergency family meeting was scheduled for Monday morning at 9 a.m. in the conference room of their soon-to-be former attorney's office. All 4 family members, their panicked lawyer Robert Walsh, and me with my new attorney, David Hernandez from Johnson and Associates. Dad tried to start with his usual fake warmth. Sweetheart, I know emotions are running high, but we're family. We can work through this. This isn't a family meeting, I said, placing a thick folder on the conference table. This is a business negotiation. David, please record everything. Sarah interrupted. You can't just... I'm not finished. My voice was ice cold. Let me explain your situation objectively. You owe the IRS $87,000 in payroll taxes. You fraudulently claimed $6,000 in PPP loans. You've been operating shell companies to hide assets. The federal sentencing guidelines for this level of tax evasion start at 37 months in federal prison. Walsh, their lawyer, finally spoke up. These are serious allegations, but I slid a document across the table, my hands steady despite my racing heart. This isn't about allegations. This is the FBI's case summary, which I received as a cooperating witness. The room went dead silent. You could hear the air conditioning humming. Dad's face drained of color as he read the charges. Tax evasion, wire fraud, PPP fraud, conspiracy. 4 felonies that could land them in federal prison for decades. We can explain everything, Dad started. Let me save you the trouble. I opened my folder slowly, savoring the moment. Sarah, your shell company received $27,000 in suspicious transfers. Michael, your business expenses include $34,000 in personal purchases. Dad, your gambling debts were paid with employee tax money. Sarah started crying, not the manipulative tears from childhood, real, terrified sobs. Michael stared at the wall like he was watching his life collapse in slow motion. Dad reached for Mom's hand like they were sinking together. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. The IRS deadline for voluntary disclosure to avoid criminal charges is in 72 hours. After that, this becomes a prosecution matter and nobody can help you. I slid a contract across the table. You have one choice: accept my restructuring plan, or federal marshals will be here by Friday. My terms: 1. Immediate payment of $100,000 toward my outstanding personal loans. 2. 51% controlling interest in Patterson and Associates. 3. $200,000 annual salary as CEO during court-supervised restructuring. 4. Sarah and Michael demoted to entry-level positions at $35,000 each. 5. Dad maintains 15% ownership, 0 decision-making authority. 6. Mom removed from all business operations. 7. Remaining $24,000 personal debt paid over 24 months at 8% interest. 8. Full cooperation with federal authorities, and complete business restructuring. Michael exploded. You can't just steal our family business. Your family business? I laughed. I've invested more actual money in this company than both of you combined, and unlike you, I know how to run it without committing federal crimes. Walsh read through the contract, his face growing paler by the page. This is actually quite reasonable given the circumstances. Without this restructuring, you're all facing federal indictment. Mom finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. What guarantee do we have that you won't just destroy everything out of revenge? I looked her directly in the eyes. Because unlike all of you, I understand that actions have consequences and family loyalty goes both ways. Accept this deal, and I'll use my expertise to save what can be saved. Reject it, and federal prosecutors will handle the family reunion from here. Dad's voice cracked. How long do we have to decide? David checked his watch. The FBI wants a response by 5 p.m. today. After that, the whistleblower protection ends and this becomes a purely criminal matter. Sarah was crying. Michael was staring at the wall. Dad was holding Mom's hand like they were attending a funeral. At 4:47 p.m., Walsh called. My clients accept your terms. Smart choice, I said. Federal agents will be here tomorrow morning to begin asset protection and restructuring oversight. I'll see you at 8 a.m. sharp. For the first time in 3 years, I hung up on them. 6 months later, I'm sitting in the CEO office of Patterson and Associates, the same office where Dad once told me I'd never understand real business. The irony tastes both sweet and bitter. Yes, the company is profitable and growing. Yes, I saved everyone from federal prison. Yes, justice was served. But sitting here, signing paychecks for my siblings who once called me worthless, I feel more exhausted than triumphant. The business results are undeniable. Revenue up 42%. Turns out professional competence works better than golf networking. Operating costs down 31%. Funny how eliminating fraud saves money. Employee satisfaction dramatically improved. Who knew legitimate benefits made people happy? 3 major contracts secured through my McKinsey connections, the same boring network they use to mock. But the family consequences cut deeper than I expected. Sarah now sits in the marketing department at $35,000 annually, producing actual work instead of buzzword presentations. She's good at graphic design when she applies herself, but I see the resentment in her eyes every morning. She nods respectfully when I give feedback, but I know she's calculating how long until she can leave. Michael handles data entry and customer service calls, skills he should have learned a decade ago. He's actually decent at problem solving when he's not scheming for shortcuts. But watching my little brother, who once called me a background person, now asking permission to take lunch breaks, it's satisfying and heartbreaking simultaneously. Dad maintains his 15% ownership but spends most days attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings, court-mandated. When he stops by the office, he asks my opinion about market trends instead of lecturing me about business vision. The respect in his voice is everything I once wanted, but it came at such a cost that it feels hollow. Mom volunteers at the library now and attends weekly therapy sessions, also court-mandated. She brought me coffee last Tuesday, actually brought it to my office, like I was someone important. Thank you, she said quietly, for saving us from ourselves. I almost cried, but I couldn't tell if it was from relief or grief. The money flows in steadily now, $325 every month from the family loan repayment, plus my $2,000 CEO salary. My bank account is healthy for the first time in 5 years. But every deposit feels like a reminder of how much I lost trying to save people who saw me as disposable. Christmas dinner this year was the smallest we've ever had. Just the 5 of us. No extended family. No family friends. Everyone was polite. Everyone said please and thank you. Dad asked about my work. Sarah complimented the wine I brought, Michael helped clear dishes without being asked. It was everything I'd wanted from them for years, and it felt like attending a funeral for the family we used to be. The biggest change is in myself. I used to think family meant unlimited forgiveness and unconditional sacrifice. I used to believe that love required enabling bad behavior and absorbing abuse without consequences. Now I understand that healthy relationships, family or otherwise, require mutual respect, clear boundaries, and accountability for actions. Love without respect is just manipulation. Loyalty without reciprocity is just exploitation. But understanding something intellectually and living with it emotionally are different things. Some mornings, I wake up in my downtown condo, look around at my success, and feel utterly alone. I won. But winning cost me the illusion that my family had ever really loved me for who I was, rather than what I could provide. 6 months ago, I was sleeping in a motel room, eating Dollar Tree ramen, feeling like the biggest failure in Connecticut. Today, I run a successful business, have financial security, and most importantly, I have my self-respect back. Would I do it again? Yes. Because the alternative, continuing to be their victim while they committed crimes in my name, was never really an option. But I'd be lying if I said it felt like a happy ending. It feels like survival. And sometimes, survival is the best victory you can hope for. Real family isn't about sharing DNA or maintaining appearances. Real family is about treating each other with dignity, honesty, and respect. Everything else is just shared last names and holiday obligations. I kept the family business. I just had to lose my family to save it.